I would like to call to order this special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly. It is Tuesday, August 31st, 2021. We are noticed from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Ms. Heller.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Ms. Kennedy. Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Zalatel.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Mr. Perez Verdilla.
Here.
Ms. Quinn Davidson. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Honest, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know what people do.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, would you read the land acknowledgement?
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair. On acknowledgement, the formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of the place is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather on traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabasca. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, Ms. Quinn Davidson is on the phone.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here today for this special meeting. I just want to note, we have 2 items on the agenda, and there are 2 marijuana establishments that wouldn't be able to stay open for business unless the Assembly approves the renewal. These were not complete on Friday, so we weren't able to take them up on Friday. I know I had mentioned on Friday we may have a special meeting. This is that meeting. Also, Mr. Rivera requested to add the mayoral veto item to this meeting since it was already scheduled, so we were able to accommodate that. So we now have before us item 4A, resolution number AR 2021-282, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly conditionally approving the renewals of municipal marijuana licenses for continued operation under the current license and authorizing the municipal clerk to take certain action. What is the will of the body?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Peterson. I want to note for members that we have Cynthia Franklin on the line, who is the representative for the 2 establishments that have licenses before us. Ms. Honest, would you like to provide any additional explanation or comment?
Through the chair, you covered it pretty well. These 2 applications are submitted by one owner. My understanding from their legal representative is that there was some issues with the ownership that they are dealing with, and so that was part of the reason why they had submitted so late. So if there's specific questions, Ms. Franklin is on the line for that, but that's kind of my understanding why they came in August 25th. Like you said, these were under review when we had a previous special meeting. They had issues that needed to be resolved, and they were able to get all of their issues resolved and get certification from the reviewing departments before today when their license would expire.
Thank you, Ms. Honest. And we don't take audience participation now, but we do have audience participation scheduled.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm also here representing AMG. I'm the general manager. I want to defer to Cindy on the phone, our legal representation, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm here representing our corporation.
Thank you. And would you mind stating your name?
My name is Julia Dykstra.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dykstra.
Yeah, no problem.
Apologies.
Oh, it's
I
fine.
didn't realize that you were here. Do members have any comments? Mr. Weddleton?
I guess anyone on the phone or to Ms. Dykstra. So what we heard was that it was delayed because of ownership issues. Was there a change in ownership that we don't see here?
Through the chair, Mr. Weddleton, there was a transfer of ownership that was submitted. It has not been approved. And so they submitted the renewal as it currently stands minus this pending transfer. So we do have notice of the transfer of ownership. It just has not gone through on the state level. And so it's not been completed yet.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Any other questions? Mr. Constance?
Thank you. Recognizing that some of this may or may not have been within the control of the applicant, it certainly raises up a concern. And that is that we are processing an application or applications on the very last day. With a special meeting of the assembly, turning all of the resources of the municipality that are involved in the cannabis business to have to flex for this operator, including inspectors, including code enforcement, including all of the entities that have to work outside of the line. And so I don't propose that we don't renew this. I want us to think about renewing or reviewing our fee schedule and deciding if it's appropriate to have a late fee apply that's meaningful enough that we send a message to future applicants that yes, we can do this, but you must pay. Because it just isn't fair, again, notwithstanding the specific circumstances of this case, which I don't pass any judgment on because I don't have any full detail. But that we, if we're going to be having a special meeting and doing extraordinary actions, that we should contemplate that. And so I want to thank the applicant actually in this process for raising that concern. And it's something that's on a list of review with myself and Dean and some other folks to talk about. There are some limits. We can't just charge fees because the state is the entity that charges the fees. We just get a portion of it. And so there's an investigation happening now on what would be the proper method for that. Some are of the school of just let them stay shut for 2 or 3 weeks while the state sorts their paperwork, while we go through our normal process September 14th. But that could be a pretty harsh penalty for an operator. I don't think that I lean that way, but it's certainly one of the options on the table. So I wanted to put that out there as an area of contemplation. I don't support that for this licensee because we have rules. Here we are. I support doing this package, but it's a conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Is there any other member discussion? I'll just pause a moment to allow any members on the phone to speak up or text me if you want in the queue. Seeing and hearing no other members in the queue, Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote to approve AR 2021-282?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Weddleton?
Yes.
Ms. Aller?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Constance?
Yes.
Ms. Salatel?
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. Perez Padilla?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We now have before us item 4B, Assembly Action on Mayoral Veto of AO 2021-76, enacting a new code section to establish a Houseless Lived Experience Advisory Board to provide the Assembly and Mayor with the perspective of residents with lived experience and to promote the participation of our current and former houseless neighbors from the regular Assembly meeting of August 24, 2021. Before I turn to Mr. Rivera, I would like to note that we are starting this item at 3:40 and we are scheduled until 4:30. I want to make sure we leave time for audience participation at the end of the meeting. So I'm asking members to limit debate to 30 minutes total for this item. Per Robert's rules, members may speak up to 2 times during the debate, and I will call on folks who haven't spoken first before others speak again. With that, Mr. Rivera?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to override the veto of Mayor Dave Bronson on ordinance number AO 2021-76.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rivera and seconded by Mr. Constant. Mr. Rivera?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to keep my comments brief in hopes that we can get through this fairly quickly without much fanfare. So, this probably shouldn't be much of a surprise to folks that I was disappointed to hear that the mayor had vetoed this ordinance. I've given plenty of arguments in support of this ordinance, and my colleagues have received dozens of emails signaling support from the community for a variety of reasons. I think rather than repeat myself, I want to read a couple of excerpts from a letter sent out by the Houseless Resource Advisory Council, HRAC, on Saturday requesting the Assembly to override the mayor's veto. So the first excerpt I'm going to read is regarding the HAND Commission. Quote, "It has been suggested that this could be the work of a subcommittee of the Housing, Homeless, and Neighborhood Development Commission. The HAND is already charged with the Herculean task of facilitating the development of adequate and affordable housing to meet our community's needs. Anchorage residents, including those living houseless, are confronted with a severe shortage of affordable housing. Rather than focusing on the inadequacies of our current housing stock, as HAND must, the new board will shine a light on the successes and shortcomings of the full range of community services accessed by the houseless," end quote. The second excerpt is regarding HRAC itself. Quote, "It has also been suggested that the new board would replicate the work of HRAC. This reflects an understandable misunderstanding of HRAC's relationship to our members. HRAC offers insightful peer-to-peer support and mentoring to individuals living houseless and those recovering from the experience. We are a resource and we are advocates in informal alliance of individuals with lived experience who extend our heart and hand to those among us who need a friend. From time to time, we encounter a specific issue that compels us to petition those of you in positions of authority, but that is not our primary focus. While we appreciate the mayor's suggestion that we be granted semi-official status, we are not prepared to become part of the establishment," end quote. For these reasons, I will be voting in support of an override of the mayor's veto and urge the 8 other colleagues who supported this ordinance to join me in voting yes. To close, I just want to make a request of the administration. Rather than simply issuing vetoes on an item, I am more than happy to proactively work with the administration on any proposals I put forward. I did reach out to the administration on this proposal before it became public and got very little feedback. I certainly did not get any indication the mayor was considering using his veto power. The mayor can absolutely use this power. I don't have any problem with that. But I simply ask that the administration have proactive conversations with members of the legislative branch to hopefully avoid having us get to this point again in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Next, I have Mr. Perez-Verdia, and then Mr. Weddleton, and then Ms. Alatel. Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of items. I'd like to hear from Assembly Council, just if there is anything different about this particular vote. Does this vote require more than a majority? Is there anything about this particular vote, because we're overriding a veto, that's different from a standard vote? That's my first question, and then I have a second one.
This requires vote supermajority to override veto. And that's what our charter says. Oh, excuse me. Yes, this requires a supermajority vote of 8 assembly members to override the veto, and that's in our charter.
Mr. Perez-Verdia, did you have another question?
Yes, the second question that I have, and I don't know if there's anybody there from the administration or Mr. Rivera can address this. The main concern that I have heard is the potential fiscal impact of this. Can the sponsor speak to that? I believe that it was brought up in our previous meeting of whether there was a fiscal impact to this new council or not.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've addressed this issue a couple of times, and I'm happy to, Madam Chair, if I may. Thank you. So In short, there is no fiscal note on this ordinance, and that is because I am not proposing that we use any new or additional municipal dollars for this purpose. There may be some usage of assembly branch staffing, but that will not require appropriating new or additional dollars. I am seeking new or additional dollars from third-party sources, so non-municipal tax revenue, to help with facilitating some of the goals of this board.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just a final comment. I will be supporting this override. I do think it's unfortunate that the concerns the mayor has were not addressed early on in the process, that we could have worked through those. And second, I just want to say that for those that want to characterize this as a disagreement between the bodies, I believe that this is just a normal part of our process. We bring forward items and we approve them, and it's well within the mayor's right to veto them. And if it's our will to override that, then we can. It's really about process and not about emotion. And so I would just encourage those that want to characterize this as more than that to just see it as part of our process of doing business. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Perez-Valdez. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, thanks. You all support the override. It's important for us to listen to this group, and it's one that has been fairly silent. I have inquired of HVAC occasionally for information and viewpoints on some things, and gotten valuable insights, but it's clear that they're not really there to routinely provide insights on issues that affect homelessness. And right now, I'm very excited that the mayor is focusing on homelessness, to be part of a legislative committee working with his team to see what we're going to do moving forward has been tremendous, very productive. And as we kind of embark on developing a new, significant new city government program to provide for the homeless, we should hear from the people that it's going to impact. And I think as a retailer, listen to your customers. And we don't have a good way of doing that now. This board is a likely way where we will. If it doesn't work, or if we no longer need it, it sunsets in 3 years. Our boards and commissions all sunset every 3 years, most of them, except the regulatory ones. And we get an audit of them. Have they performed? Are they needed any longer? And if not, we can end them. So it's not necessarily forever. If it's not productive, it can go away. So I do support this. I think it'll be a very useful board, and I will support the override.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Next, we have Ms. Zolotel and then Ms. Allard. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to share that in the little over 2.5 years I've been chairing the Committee on Housing and Homelessness, it's a repeated refrain that we need to hear from those with lived experience. And I thank Mr. Rivera for putting forward the formal structure so that we have the way to hear from those with lived experience. I appreciate HRAC coming and sharing their perspective, but to have an official board and commission that can draft resolutions and make specific policy recommendations in that structure, I think is really a big missing piece of the puzzle. And they'll be able to do that work at a time and place and in a way that's convenient for them. And then submit those documents so that they can be discussed, much like we see with other boards and commissions, like the Budget Advisory Commission, or even the Community Council. So I'll be supporting the override to the veto, and I urge my colleagues to as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zolotel. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You made, one of my colleagues made a comment saying that they don't want it to be part of the establishment. Yet we are asking the establishment to use their resources in order for this board to happen. And that means using union employees. The other thing is that we still don't know the source of the funding because Mr. Rivera, you still have never answered that actual question. And two, if we aren't establishing it with the establishment, then why would you want to use your resources for funding to form a board outside of the establishment altogether? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Is that a question to Mr. Rivera?
If he feels comfortable asking or answering, if not,
Sure. So I'm gonna assume a couple of questions out of what I just heard. So first is the quote that I just stated. It is from when I talked establishment. That wasn't a word that I used. That was actually a quote from the Houseless Resource Advisory Council and the email and the letter that we got from them on Saturday. So that was not something, a word that came out of my mouth. HRAC does not want to become a part of the establishment. What they want rather is a municipal commission or board that does become a part of the establishment. And that is what this, what AO 2021-76 sought to do. On your other question regarding financing, I think like I answered to Mr. Perez-Verdia, in terms of the municipal dollars, there are no municipal dollars going to financing. I am hoping to achieve financing from third parties for third-party staff support. And unfortunately, those are still things under negotiation, and I can't really speak to who that third-party staff support might be and where that money might be coming from. But unfortunately, this veto sort of put a pause on those, and I'm hoping after today I'll be able to quickly wrap that up.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Do you have a follow-up, Ms. Allard?
so my concern is, I think it's a great thing what you're putting forward, but my concern then would still go back to the fact that you want to use assembly resources that we've already stretched. And that's been determined by the assembly because we hired somebody to come on board. So fiscally, we are all asking everything we put forward to have a fiscal source. And yet on this particular one is absolutely not needed or not given. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Quick response, Mr. Rivera, then we'll go to Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to bring up 3 recent boards and commissions which, when approved, did not have a fiscal source. It was just assumed within the budgets of various departments. One was the Youth Advisory Commission that did not have a fiscal source. Second was the Stormwater Utility Advisory Commission that did not have a fiscal source. And then third was the Port Advisory Commission. I do not believe that one also had a fiscal source. So that is because these things are typically sort of subsumed within the department, and the department takes on the added responsibility of ensuring that these boards and commissions are adequately staffed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. I want to speak briefly to the HAND Commission. The Housing, Homelessness, and Neighborhood Development Commission has a very long history within the municipality. They tend to have a pretty specific function where they work to determine the appropriation of HUD dollars to specific programs and make recommendations along those lines. And they haven't really done much, if any, work in the direct engagement with homeless individuals, people who don't have a house in our community. But they are pretty tightly stretched and in fact recruiting for membership at this time for people who have an understanding of basic flow of dollars between the federal government, the state, local government, and entities providing services in our community. And so they aren't in fact the natural for an entity that is an organization for by houseless individuals in our community. They're really more so representative of the organizations that are providing the services in the community. And so they are in some ways partners to it, but they're not cognate close enough. And in fact, there's a conflict a lot of the times. If you look at who sits on those HAND Commission seats over time, they're the people providing services to the homeless people. And there's a power differential there that creates an impossibility for the individuals experiencing homelessness to speak in an earnest and frank way, because the people who hold their roof over their head and provide them their daily bread are in the room too.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Seeing no other members in the queue, I'll just pause. I guess there are just 2 on the phone now. members may proceed to vote on the motion to override the mayoral veto of AO 2021-76. Madam Clerk, would you conduct the vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Weddleton?
Yes.
Ms. Allard?
No.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
Yes.
Ms. Salatel?
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. Perez Verdia?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
The motion passes 9-1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we have audience participation. And members of the audience who'd like to speak, if you would come forward, and hold on one second while I get my timer ready here. You will have 3 minutes, and please identify yourself for the record. Go ahead, Mr. Haberman.
My name is Eugene Carl-Haberman. I represent myself. I follow the public process. When the public process done appropriately, decision made by the governing body is more likely public interest. First, I agreed with Mayor's veto on this issue that he vetoed on. I'm concerned about, as I said before, when there was a public hearing on this item, is I was the one way back when on the committee meetings, the homeless, saying that they need to be heard. But the principal problem is the way you handle meetings. As long as you handle meetings and not complying with the laws, how do you expect the people to be connected? And bring a selective group out that you feel that they're not connected, where I've been saying that they need to be connected, is an excuse to continue the same old thing of not complying with the laws and process. And also, I'd like to remind you, there was a meeting last week. It didn't say homeless. And the title of it had no word of homeless, but it was about the shelters and so forth. And it was Wednesday. And the public had no clue who was hosting it or whatever. And that's more of the same. The irony is you voted voted for overriding the veto of the mayor, but that item that you had last Wednesday was vague and it was about shelters and stuff and dealing with homeless. So it's more of the same. But I'd like to do my remaining comments is what I said at the last meeting of the assembly in this room. The city needs to get out of the business of running other cities' elections. It needs to stop now. There was an excuse made in the meeting last Friday where the clerk informed that there was a conflict in dealing with the recall on Zalatel and when you can hold back vote by the people. And the conflict was there was another election the city is involved with, Juneau. Surprised a lot of people, including the administration. This needs to end now, as I said Friday. And when I had my comments here last Friday, unfortunately Channel 2 was packing up their camera, so they didn't clue into what I said. But I did hear from other people who called me up and saying they appreciate those comments. I've monitored elections for years. I've seen election after election being not legitimate. But the one thing that was striking is Anchorage is in the business of being involved with other cities' elections. And it's appalling. And we're in America. We're in America. Is any city running other people's elections? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Are there any other members of the public who would like to participate?
Yeah.
Please come forward. If you would state your
Good afternoon, members of the Assembly. My name is Brian Johnson. I just want to say that it's absolutely ridiculous how you guys operate your meetings. Of all these people, we get to testify after your vote. That's crap. I mean, bullshit. I disagree. Audience participation should be your first line of defense against anything and offense, all right? I'm gonna say this anyway, because I'm here. I'm disgusted by the actions of this assembly. I'm unimpressed with this cockamamie group of people sitting in front of me. The assembly reminds me of problems that our last president had to endure. The party line divide. All right? As for a board of homeless people, we have a board. It's sitting right here. We have a panel sitting right here. Every single one of you people have residents that are homeless. If you don't, well, that's not America, because that's how America is right now. We all have homeless. You want to hear their stories? It all boils down to two things: addiction, all right, or mental illness. Okay? Look it up. Mental illness or addiction. We need to concentrate on this problem in this room, not another board, not another panel. This is your job. This is why we voted you in. This is why I voted. This is why most of these people in this room voted. As for cockamamie, it means ridiculous or implausible. And this assembly is ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to participate? Please come forward.
Thank you, Chairperson LaFrance. And council, it's wonderful for me to be here. I am a homeless man, and I was relocated here from the state of Maine. I just got here last month. I have,
Please state your name for the record, sir.
my name is Timothy Beers, B as in boy, E-E-R-S, just like the alcoholic beverage. And I like to be called TJ. And I was doing my quest in the state of Maine, picking up trash and litter on the highways, bringing the message to the community about bringing awareness to end homelessness, stopping discrimination against people with disabilities, and pushing for a national homeless bill of rights, hate crime legislation, and homeless shelter reform. Because if you've ever had to stay at any of these shelters, there's too much crime and it's time for change. I was living in Seattle for 1 year and I was raped, gang raped at the Bailey Boucher house. The people that operate the Bailey Boucher house, which is owned by Virginia Mason Hospital, knows exactly what was going on there. When I finally got away from Seattle, I made my way down to Olympia and Vancouver. I let every law enforcement officer know what was going on. Nobody wanted to hear me. I became suicidal and homicidal because I wanted to go back and kill the people that gang raped me. Nobody wanted to hear me. I went ahead and took the higher ground. I admitted myself into psychiatric care. I was in psychiatric care at Salmon Springs or Rainier Springs in Salmon Creek, Washington. And then when I got back to Maine, I went to Spring Harbor out in Westbrook. I wanted to cure myself because I did not want to end up in prison for killing people that gang raped me. With the problem in Seattle and other cities in this country, the same thing is happening, and it's time for change. I have a magic bag of tricks that you will all see in the near future from me because I do peaceful protests, and I want to go to every capital and do a 3-day protest pushing for a national homeless bill of rights, hate crime legislation, and homeless shelter reform, and I hope that my message will come across. Thank you so much for giving me this time.
Thank you for your participation. Are there any other members of the public who would like to participate? Please come forward, sir. If you could stand up and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Paul Stang. I'm president of the University Area Community Council. Could I have 5 because I'm representing the community council?
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you. I'd like to ask Meg, who I think hopefully is still on the line, whether there will be another opportunity for public comment before the facilitated group comes forth with a agreed upon proposal.
Mr. Constant.
Mr. Constant?
When you're done. You go through and when you're done, we can talk.
Well, no, I just need to know the answer to that.
Normally, we don't answer questions in public testimony, so I just don't want to get into that habit.
All right, well, then I won't say what I was going to say till later. I'll say it now. We think you should exclusively focus on the shelter for this fall and winter. Delay the consideration of longer-term solutions until after this urgent, immediate issue is resolved. We're concerned about getting hung up in what's going to be in the future when the present is most important. We think that smaller 100 to 150 bed facilities are superior to larger ones because they're quiet, less anonymous, and can house people who have similar needs so that people who are homeless can be helped more efficiently. Smaller is less intrusive to the neighbors and parks in the area. It's less expensive if the shelter or care facility fails for some reason. Smaller are less institutional, safer, and less conducive to spreading COVID-19 and other communicable diseases. One advantage of a large facility is that if criminal issues arise, police would be more used to coming and arriving quickly. But such frequent police presence may detract from the reputation of the facility. We acknowledge that several smaller facilities may cost more than a large one, so effectiveness of service per dollar should be considered, as well as client satisfaction and client retention. Rejecting the locational preferences of people experiencing homeless could easily backfire, and this was part of the proposal that the mayor made for southeast of Tudor and Elmore. People are likely to leave a facility that is remote to their preferred area. We urge you to have a full discussion of exactly what services will be provided to the people experiencing homelessness. This is at least as important as any physical location and characteristics of a shelter, and should be an equal part of any facilitated agreement proposed by the group. Anchorage homeless care experts should be requested to draft a proposal of the services that are needed for whatever homeless facility is going to be proposed. That's an essential part, as well as what the shape of the building is. Include in the proposal the specific detailed facts and rationale behind whatever proposal the group agrees upon. Consider that Pastor John Lamatia said that a critical ingredient for the Anchorage gospel mission is to function effectively, is that it is a high barrier facility. The affected neighbors and wooded areas will be likely to experience many more impacts with a low barrier facility. Help those with at least some income but experiencing homelessness by relying as heavily as possible on the affordable housing programs, housing relief, rent and utility assistance, subsidized housing for homeless, of the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation that is primarily funded by federal grants and federal funds. So it doesn't have to come out of all of it out of Anchorage's business. Take advantage. Senator Stevens was a master at that. You can do the same thing. Take advantage of federal funds to make this happen in concert with the other efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your participation. Sure. Are there any other members of the public who wish to participate?
I would like to thank the Assembly for vetoing the veto.
Could you state your name, please?
My name is Lisa Mayer.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you all for vetoing the veto. I believe that this is a very complex crisis, and it is nationwide, but it's going to take all of us, particularly the people that we are trying to assist. The answer is not in a one-stop shop. it certainly would impose a very big hardship on the neighborhoods that are around this proposal on Elmore and Tudor. These are often lower middle class housing, a lot of starter homes, retired folks, assisted living. I know neighbors that are foster parents as well. You won't see a lot of fences, and you do not see a lot of security. We are as active as we are able to be in neighborhood guards and looking out for one another. The local coffee stand, hut rather, experienced a lot of hardship already. Their power source was tapped into. She received a bill $900 higher than what she was accustomed to. There is very little that I've seen in the way of traffic address for the pedestrians that are going to be crossing the road to access accommodations and needs. Speaking of needs, there is not a grocery store anywhere nearby. There's a Holiday Mart. We've had many accidents and fatalities in a Mart. There is the Gospel Mission. They're right in across from it, and it's difficult to get folks to use the crosswalk when it's only a few feet away. In the wintertime, we have a lot of snow and ice built up on the approach to Tudor. That would be from Vance or Checkmate. Without having the sidewalks cleared in any reliable fashion, it is very dangerous as it is. So I would like all parties to talk about this, more engineers. I'm trying to keep up with the figures, and I believe that the 15 million is now what, 30 million?
And ma'am, that your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for your participation. Are there any other members of the public who would like to participate? I don't see anyone else. Mr. Thompson, if you want to think.
Sure. So now, we're going to eat up anyone else's time. Mr. Strang, yes, there will be a number of additional opportunities for that working group to come back before the public and the assembly to describe the nature of the work. Nothing it does will be conclusory, and no step it takes is going to be too far past where the last meeting was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Next, we have assembly comments. We'll go ahead and start with the phone, and I believe we still have Mr. Perez-Verdia on the line. Mr. Perez-Verdia, do you have any comments?
Madam Chair, he is no longer on the line.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll go ahead and go around the room. Mr. Dunbar?
No comments on it, Madam Chair.
Mr. Rivera?
No comments.
Mr. Peterson?
No comment, thank you.
Ms. Aller? Mr. Weddleton?
It's a gorgeous afternoon out there, we should want to.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
I only echo Mr. Welton's comments.
Thank you. I do have a comment, actually. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, we've received some feedback from members of the public asking about the relationship between the assembly and the administration and urging collaboration. And I wanted to point out just a few things, that there have been 14 unanimous confirmations of Mayor Bronson's appointees. One of those appointees resigned, one was not confirmed. And all of the legislation that has come before the assembly, with the exception of one item, was passed. And the one item actually was pulled by Member Kennedy and seconded by Member Allard, and that concerned the Navigation Center, which actually we now have a collaborative group working together between members and the administration. So that ended up, I believe, in a more collaborative place. And I also just wanted to mention that Assembly leadership has invited the administration to meet together so we can discuss budget priorities before we begin the budget process, so that we can have a smoother, more efficient approach to those discussions. And that as a member, and I know I can't speak for everyone, I am always looking for ways that we can work together. I want what's best for our community, and I believe my colleagues do as well. So I agree with Mr. Weddleton, it's a beautiful day. We should get out there. Thank you all so much for being here today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. What did they consider?